Hello and welcome to episode 210 of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and with me, as always, the hoot and howl herself, Shanine. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Adrenaline rush from that intro, but
We made
nobody
it.
panic. We're good.
She's like, thank God I'm not the one hosting because Chris is freaking me out.
When are you not, Chris?
You know, fair point. Then back in snowy Denver. Emma, how you doing? You're not in Denver, but that's the only city that people know.
Denver area.
You know.
Not for long.
People know Boulder. People know Boulder because Boulder people have a very specific type.
Boulder is in between Denver and where I am. So Boulder is closer to me than Denver. But
So she's in Boulder. She knows all about the Boulder type.
Yeah.
oh yes, 100%.
She's surrounded by
I know
Patagonia,
everything about it.
Subarus, and Chacos.
Subaru!
To be fair, that's almost the entire Colorado population.
I mean,
anyways.
true. That's very
So,
true. But
it's all Patagonia and Subarus.
the Boulder people talk about it exclusively.
Oh yes,
If you're not
it's
wearing
very
Patagonia,
exclusive.
you can't get away with that REI brand, that
No.
outdoor research. No, if it's
No.
Patagonia or nothing.
Yep.
Patagucci.
And you just heard him, the red panda, Chris Nicolay. How you doing?
Hello. I'm a little sad I'm not the as always person anymore. I'm sorry about that.
I feel like it's been Shanine quite a bit, like Shanine and I quite a bit lately.
Sheenan's a lot more stable than me in more ways than one.
In more ways than one. This
I feel
week,
like that could be applied to all of us. Shanine's the most stable.
Oh no.
no
That-
pressure.
That begs the
No
question, who's the
pressure,
most
Shane.
unstable of us?
You.
Yeah, that's true.
So this week we are doing a tier list of all 20 books that we have read for our book club. If you're watching later on YouTube, you can find a link down in the description to the playlist for all of the book clubs. So go and check that out. But before we get into it and how we're ranking or handling our tier list, you can find us as First Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can join our Discord server if you want to chat, or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on Twitch Monday nights, 6:45 Mountain Time, and find the videos over on YouTube where you can like, comment, and subscribe. Then you can also check out our Redbubble store if you want any of that First Geek 411 merch. So we were talking before the cast.
We were.
This one is a little bit more of a challenge with our normal tier list ranking. So going through how it was last time. S, amazing. Everyone should read. A is great, something that most people should read. B is good, has some ups and downs. C is meh, it was a book. And then D is terrible. Why does it exist? So the big change from our Pixar tier list is that most of these books have a different target audience. So we are going to do our best to kind of take that from within the context of the target audience for the books. So to pick on the two that we used in our pre-show discussion, Midnight at the Barclay Hotel, very different target audience than Dune.
What?
Oh yes.
So we're going to do our best to rank them within.
Unless you're Chris.
Pretty sure I would jump straight
who's
from
reading
Midnight
Lord of
at
the
Barclay
Rings
rotate
in, like,
straight
fourth
into
grade.
Dune.
Chris is like, you know what? I like a mystery. What if we read Dune? Something's mysterious there. But before we get into it, I want to hear from everyone. How are we feeling about this tier list? What is our general consensus?
So I was a little confused. I thought we're rating the book club episodes, not the books. No, I'm just kidding. No, I knew that.
We did actually talk about that
did.
while you were gone about doing that.
doing
having
the
that
tier
be a
list on
separate-
the episodes
Yeah.
instead of the books.
Instead of the
because-
books. As a
D tier
as a
books have
follow-up.
S tier episodes.
Exactly. I'm not gonna lie. Most of our book club episodes are probably S tier,
Yeah.
except for where we all agree. That was just like, okay, yeah, same. Okay, that's like A tier. Okay.
Shanine, how you feeling?
I'm still so uncertain. I have ranked them all and I'm not committed to probably more than like 3 of these rankings. So we'll see.
I'm gonna let you guys all talk first and then go the opposite direction.
And then whatever it is, just stir the pot.
I strongly disagree on all accounts. Typical Chris move.
Who knows what's gonna happen? Huh?
Da, da, da. Bait and switch.
Emma, how are you feeling?
I keep switching a few things around, but there's definitely the ones I have strong opinions about, and very easily got locked in their places. So,
for me, I'm kind of in the point where my S's I feel really good about, and my D's I feel really good about, and everything in the middle is kind of a blob.
Well, that's what the middle's for.
I feel like this is the widest gap for my B tier, especially. Where like honestly, I feel like I could just do 3 levels, like S, A, and B, and that would be it. Just have those 3. But here we are. But speaking of strong opinions, as with our Pixar tier list, everyone will have a veto. And so as we go around and we will say our ranking for every book, if someone does not like where that book ends up, they can veto it to either move it up a tier or down a tier. You can veto someone's veto, of course. We saw a little bit of that going on last time.
Still bitter.
And then,
but on a plus note, King Amos is tuning in for this episode currently.
Yes.
So, I mean, we didn't completely. You didn't scare him off. I tried to.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got Nerd King coming in as well. Yeah. So stuff's happening. And so, and I should also say, so the way it's going to work is we are going to each rank the books. We're going to do our best to kind of err on the side of positive. So like if there's a tie, things will move towards the top, or
so you
like,
round up.
Yeah. We'll round up is basically what I'm saying there. We may end up creating some bonus tiers if there are complete ties in terms of where something ends up. So just kind of be aware of all of those things as we go. And then, all these,
it's a lot of work for me.
Yeah. All these are also subject to change. So here we are. So let's get into it. We are going to be going through the books in the order that we read them, not in the order that they are in Tier Maker. Good luck, Chris. And so I did my best to grab covers that were very clear for what the book was.
Yeah, none of these are a problem. We're good. We're set.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to have the cars issue where we couldn't determine which car was
which car. Especially the first one was obvious.
Yeah.
And then it's like all the others are just like, is that 3? Is that 4? What? How many cars move?
Yeah. So let's get into it with our first book club, The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes, or Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a series of short stories.
I was literally just staring
Sherlock
at that.
Wow. And so bottom left.
There it is.
And so for me, I'll kick us off with this one. This is a B for me. Like, I feel like I'm going to just start filling out that B section early. And so this is a B for me. I enjoyed it. It's definitely an introduction to the character, and there's a lot in there that I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I didn't already know who Sherlock Holmes was. And so, but there's definitely some fun stories. In terms of ranking the book club, this is also where we got the question for who would you rather have read this book through, or whose perspective would you rather hear this through? Shout out to Watson's wife. She's the MVP. And so
and the housekeeper.
Yes.
The landlady.
But yeah, so B from me.
This one's a solid A for me, just because even if I didn't know like the Sherlock Holmes character,
hover it.
It's a good, solid, like it's the kind of stuff I personally enjoy, even just as like short stories. I like a good old fashioned detective mystery trying to figure stuff out. So
it's a B for me as well. I think it has some ups and downs, is accurate. There are some great fun stories. Love trying to solve the mystery with Sherlock. And then I'm pretty sure it was part of the ones that we read. I saw someone tweet about it the other day. They're like, anyone want to talk about how weird it is that the first Sherlock book has just this really weird story about Mormons like walking through the desert? And I'm like, right? That
Might be
one
my
was weird.
favorite part, actually.
It was very weird. So it's a B for me.
I'm going to agree with everyone. It's B. It's just so old too. Definitely need to have some perspective prior to reading it. But you know, Sherlock's just a good character, and it makes sense that like if he wasn't commonplace currently, this would be like a C tier or D tier book for me for sure. So without context, I wouldn't care for it, but with a ton of context, it makes sense. So if you are a Sherlock fan, it makes sense that you might want to read this. So B, right in the middle.
Brings us to our next one, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Emma, why don't you start us off for this one?
This one was much less disappointing than another one on the list that will come later on. But now I have to figure out where it is I stuck this. Okay, so I stuck this at a solid B. If I remember correctly, there was a bit of rambling that happened that I just wasn't a fan of. That was just like, is this relevant? Why are you talking about this? Why are you just giving us your random thoughts? But it was very enjoyable, like very solid, like definitely earned its place as a classic sort of Halloween time frame scary story, and I quite enjoyed it, but like I kind of want more from it at the same time. So solid B.
For me, I'm right there with you. This is a B for me. I think my big criticism was it feels like main character guy, whose name I cannot remember.
Ichabod Crane.
Ichabod Crane.
Yeah.
I was on Foghorn Leghorn, and I was like, "There's no way that's correct." Ichabod. I feel like it's just way more of a jerk in this. Like, it's not like he's the good guy in like the Disney version, but like I just found him so unsympathetic, and so like I kind of felt more for the other people in this book.
And you said B,
but yeah, B for me.
Okay.
I said A for this one. I don't know. It's just some good classic spooks. It's short, so you know you can get through it pretty fast. And I don't know. There was like this subtle sarcasm. So like, no, Ichabod Crane was not great, but we were joking about him together. So.
For me, it was so it's gonna end up in B regardless. So it's a C tier book for me. I'm happy everything that came from it, but like unlike Sherlock Holmes within its context, it's the worst part about it.
Yeah.
Like everything that spun off from the tale is kind of fun, kind of.
It's the worst remake.
Yes,
remake
being the original. Yes. Kind of the creative liberties that have been taken from every subsequent piece of Sleepy Hollow
have definitely improved
on it.
Greatly.
So I'm happy it exists in that sense, but because everything else currently exists, you don't need to read it.
Yeah. If you've seen one of the random remakes, just you've seen it all plus a good additional chunk. So
plus better endings, better lots of things, lots of good things happening.
I don't know. Which one did we watch for movie night? What version was that? That one's ending was bananas.
I don't think I was there for that movie night.
Did we watch one?
I watched a version of it. Maybe it was just me, but
I definitely watched ones. I just don't remember watching it as a group.
Yeah, I feel like we might have watched stuff on our own and then
Yeah.
moved on.
And to Cameron's point, yeah, like I wish Ichabod was just a better character. Like in his spin-offs, like he just becomes maybe he's a little more endearing. Sometimes he's awesome and cool and very smart and just cool, but yeah.
I think this was the one that I had the hot takes about Tim Burton on.
That's the one I was thinking of, the
So-
Tim Burton version.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this original book is not the worst remake because the Tim Burton movie exists.
Yeah.
Frankly,
Whoa.
it's not good.
It is
There
not
you
good.
go.
It's not good, but-
very much agree.
But I love it.
Well,
In the best possible way.
Well, for our next book,
Do you
we
know what I
have-
actually want? Sorry, I want Taika to do a Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, I'm sure it would be
Oh.
fantastic.
I would be down for that.
That would be so good. Okay, sorry. Go on, Cameron.
For our next one, we have Advent, A Thread in the Night. A Advent themed, I say short collection of Devos, we'll say. Shanine, what did you think?
I'm putting this one in S tier.
I called
love
it.
I gifted it. I gifted it to like everyone the first Christmas that I read it. I've read it every Advent season since. I'm a big fan of Evan, and
That's only one
I think-
additional Advent season, by the way. I think, right?
well,
Is that only one?
everyone since.
Yeah, all one Advent.
All
The
one
record's
additional
going
Advent.
strong
All of
there.
them. And I will probably continue to read it as well. It's just, I think, a very powerful way of looking at Advent, and I love it.
And she can't badmouth it because the author might actually tune in.
I would not say anything bad about Evan.
Chris, what do you think?
You know,
Go ahead,
honestly,
Chris.
I'm gonna agree. I'd put this in S tier. I think if you are interested in Advent or anything along those lines, it's a great kind of. It doesn't like introduce you to the concepts of Advent, but it is a great, easy way to ease yourself into it. / also maybe cry a little bit. You know.
This one's a solid A for me. I'm not the biggest like Devo person, but for a holiday themed Devos, if you will, this one was very good. And I quite enjoyed it. I think for me, the only way like a collection of Devos would hit S tier is if it really got me into doing devotionals like consistently, which isn't to say that, you know, this wasn't a bad collection by any means. It was quite enjoyable, but
I don't think that book exists, so
yeah, exactly. Which is why that spot is being reserved for in case it
when
does.
someone actually makes one without the corny pieces on random days.
There you go.
Well, that was a stretch.
So for
Not
me,
this
I
book,
guess,
Devos,
I
yeah.
guess I'm the hot take here. I put this as a B. This is probably my like B is this giant blob of all of these books that like I think this is like a high B for me. So I think with our rounding that does leave this as an S. But yeah, I feel like for me, like this is one that and I really struggled with this in terms of like what our ranking is, because I would definitely recommend that most people in this target audience read it. But at the same time, I feel like it has ups and downs, even though those are probably its best features. And the things that some people would consider downs, other people would consider up. And so like, especially like when it comes to the length, like it is a very quick read. Some of the days are like legitimately like a couple sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that can be for people depending on where they're at, both its biggest strength and a weakness. And so on 6/13/2022, this is a high B for me. It might be different tomorrow or come Advent season, but As of this day, that's where I am.
Evan, we'll make sure Cameron isn't on next time you visit us.
Yeah. I will not get a Christmas card this year. Next, we have Letters from Father Christmas by Tolkien. Chris, you brought this one. What did you think about it?
Oh, S tier all the way. I think everyone should read this, whether you have kids or not. It's just so charming and gives you a ton of fun random lore that doesn't exist in any actual lore around Christmas or Santa Claus or Father Christmas that you get to use. There's goblins, there's polar bears, there's elves. It's wonderful. It's my favorite.
Hands down, also very hard agree. S tier, way up there. I would have loved having like this be one of the books that comes out and sits on the coffee table during Christmas every year. And I think that'll continue to be a thing. It was very delightful to read, and just like Chris said, it's just basically Tolkien's own lore version of Christmas. Like, we had trouble delivering the presents this year because Polar Bear accidentally lit the gift room on fire or whatever. Like, didn't mean to do it on purpose, but it was just like all of these little, letters that he never intended for an audience to read outside of his kids. And so you really get that sense of, his love for his kids and the kinds of things he would make up for them.
To date, I have bought over 12 copies of this book.
Wow.
Nice.
Because it goes out in gifts. It's my gift exchange gift. It's if you have kids of a certain age, I'm probably giving this to you for Christmas. It's such a great gift, and people are like, what is this? Because it's also like kind of something that flies under the radar, and that's also one of my favorite things about it. Just like, wait, what?
Shanine, what do you think?
Yeah, this is an S for me as well. It is very delightful. I love the story of just how it came to exist at all. Like Tolkien just writing letters every year from Father Christmas to his son. Like, it's so stinking cute. And yeah, it's just fun and delightful and Christmassy.
And disguising his handwriting. It's just...
Yeah.
Cameron's ready for his hot take.
I know.
Yeah, this is a C tier for me.
So I might bring it down to A. No, I think the 3 S's.
The 3 S's,
Yeah.
I think, would cancel out. And so, yeah, for me, like, kind of even back to like what we said with Sherlock, like, this is, I think, outside of the context of this being Tolkien, like, I would struggle to recommend this to anyone else, like outside of that context. And I don't know, maybe I'm just as I've kind of come with hot takes on both of the Christmas books. But like, I feel like for me, like, again, this is one that, like, going back through this list, I could not have told you anything about. Like, I really just don't remember it. And so, yeah, that's kind of why it landed there for me. King Amos in chat says Cameron hates Christmas. Got it.
Noted.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why this is here for me. Like, yeah,
Cameron's...
I don't disagree with anything y'all have said. It's just, yeah. So, our next book, and did I rig this so I specifically could be the one to talk about it? Maybe. Just kidding. There's no way I planned that far out. Our 5th book is Treasure Island. Originally written in magazines. This was the easiest freaking D tier of any book on this list.
I feel like it's going to be a solid agree across the board.
I will say this was that I think Emma referenced it as we were getting going. This is an S tier book club. Like, I feel like this, like the Treasure Island book club is the book club that we, yeah.
S tier book club.
Like, we came into
We
Book
pummeled this
club,
book into the ground.
like the next three, like, or this and the next two, I feel like are where we like really hit our stride with book club.
Oh yeah.
And I definitely say this is an S tier book club that everyone should go back. Shout out to there wasn't enough giant squids for it to be realistic. But I think this is the one that also
Yes.
patented the Goldilocks scale of most books are 30% too long or 30% too short. And this one was definitely 30% too long.
At least.
But yeah, easiest D tier for me.
Oh yeah. Hard agree. Hands down. Straight up D tier. Very similar to Sleepy Hollow.
Go watch a spinoff. That's all
Like-
you need.
Like
It's also the book that just makes
worst
me believe
remake in existence, and it's the original.
high school rating lists are just there to torture you. No wonder why we don't
Yeah.
like to read anymore.
Yeah.
Because people still want to read books like Treasure Island for class. What?
For me, I'm a little torn between D and C because D says terrible. Why does this exist? And the reason that it exists is to give us Muppet Treasure Island and Treasure Planet. So I'm like happy it exists, but I don't think you necessarily have to read it.
What does your heart tell you?
It's not enough to bring it up from D, but
The debate
I
on
know.
Shanine's face.
and I'm assuming it's probably not worth a veto to argue it.
Definitely not vetoing it. Like I'm comfortable with it being in D.
I would be happy vetoing this down to a lower tier.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Yeah, like, okay, here's what I will say. So, Treasure Island's one of the ones that was written for a kids finance magazine, right?
Something like
Yeah.
that.
If I remember right.
Something
Am I
along
remembering
those
that
I
right?
lines.
feel like we were more
It
confused
was
when we
written in
found that out.
installments, right? Yeah, we were like, oh, okay. So it should have stayed that way. No
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
didn't need to be compiled because it would still exist in a weird, very weird form, and someone could have uncovered it and made the spin-offs. It just, yeah, doesn't need to exist in the current form it does.
Full novel
If that helps
format
your decision,
without
Sinead.
any novel adjustments.
So, Chris, I assume you're picking D.
Oh yeah, I mean, I put it where I assume it's gonna end up every time
Yeah.
we start one, and I was just like, I remember that episode.
Okay, Shanine, did you pick a final letter?
I'll lock into D.
Yeah.
Final
Do it.
answer.
Let the hate flow through you.
Uh,
The vitriol we feel for this book.
Okay. And Janine, we're going to come to you first for our next one. Ready Player One, the video game VR style book about a dystopian United
I'm
States.
guessing.
What did you think?
I have put this in B. It is a fine sci-fi book if you like 80s and geeky references. It's fun. Why not? And it was better than the movie. So
Still haven't seen the movie.
Chunk's ready to use his veto. I know that, but
I'm just one person.
Emma, what do you think?
it's a solid C for me. Like, it was a book. I loved the concept and like the route the author was taking with it. I just felt like it wasn't it felt like a draft. Like, it didn't feel like the final draft of the book. And yet it was.
And
Like-
yet it was.
And yet it was. Like,
We'll bring that idea up a little bit later on as
oh,
well.
yes. Like, it was good and I enjoyed reading it, but like I also wanted to take a pen and paper to it and like be an editor for once, which is like something I never want to do, and be like, look, great concept, characters, great, like you're going places, but it needs work. So solid C. great overall, but just needed some more work.
For me, this is a B. I feel like this is propped up by the fact that it's about geek culture. And I feel like if this was about any other like niche cultures, like this, we would like be burning this to the ground. And so, no, like that's kind of unfair because like we're removing the book from how it's written, but like I feel like this gets off the back of like, oh, it's super cool. RX-78 showed up. Like you get your Gundam references, you get all of these like D&D things. Like, I feel like it's held up by those references rather than the book itself. Yeah, so B for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd put this in B because yeah, it's a very niche audience. It's also an easy read, which gives it some extra points because it looks intimidating, kind of. I mean, like it looks like a full, like it should be a full, but definitely something you could read in half a day, probably. I don't know, unless you're Cameron.
Here we are. That'll come up again later as well.
But it is a lot of fun. There are some fun concepts. I'm a big fan of full dive VR or concepts too. Although this isn't technically full dive, that you're still active in your physical environment, but the fact that it exists just means that geeks have taken over, and I love that.
And Shanine, did you give your take on? No, you.
She started us off.
Yeah.
You went. Yeah, you went. Yes. Okay. I was like making sure we're in the good place. So we ended with a B on that one. So Emma, we're gonna pass the next one to you for Ready Player 2. What do you think of it?
Very much a D tier. Hated the way it ended. Like, I kind of get where the author was going with the end, but it just didn't fit with the world. Needed a lot of editing still. It felt very rushed, and yet there was a lot of like, you're literally repeating everything you just told us in a new 5-sentence paragraph. This was my biggest complaint, was like, it says the same thing 3 times over in like 5 different sentences. Completely unnecessary. Needed a whole lot of reworking. Just not good. Didn't like it. I could see a mediocre attempt at a sequel, which I can get given the success for the first one, but for me it just completely flopped. So yeah. Strong opinion.
Yeah, strong opinion, but I feel like it might be the norm here. This is D tier for me as well. The thing that bothers me so much about this is like using our ranking of why does this exist. I know exactly why this exists. And it wasn't because the author had a good idea for the story. This is also one, I'll put this with Treasure Island. I think this is an S tier book club about a D tier book.
Oh yeah.
That I think our discussion of this is way better than the book itself. I'd probably guess that most people's discussions of this book are better than the book. It's just, yeah, it's not good. I feel like there's a lot of ideas in this that very much are I'm going to just think of this idea and put it in the book because I can. Like, let's not forget that there's like a whole chapter dedicated to Wade making movies at the beginning of this that literally plays no part in the rest of the book. Like, how was this not the rough draft? Like, who was the editor on this? Like, someone needed to talk him down. But yeah, D tier book.
Whatever he was going for in that chapter, it could have easily been, he could have nixed that chapter and worked whatever it was he was going for into one paragraph and another chapter somewhere. Whatever it is he was trying to go for, I still don't know, but Who
Mhm.
knows?
Shanine, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely D. Um, I mean, yeah, there's some points that what were we trying to do here? I don't know. There was a lot going on, but not a lot of the right things going on. And um it, it we read it.
We read it. The best that we can say.
The worst part about this book is its announcement. There was hope for it. It's like, ooh, it should be fun. And then you read it. You're like, oh. That hurts.
Expectation, reality.
That hurts. See,
Mhm.
there's a part of me that wants to like bring this like up because I want to recommend it to people so we can all tear it apart together. Like it's one of those. It's like you should read this now, so you know what I'm talking about. Like it's like I suffer. It's like you want people to suffer with you, kind of books. So it earned some points for that. The way I felt like it's like this is actually like I don't think it's a first draft. I'm sorry. I think it's at least a second because he wrote a plot and then he still had leftover references he had to make, so he had to go and put the app put in the making the movies so he can reference further things, make more references.
It's a few drafts in for sure, but it's still not anywhere near being a final draft.
No, they probably should have went with the first draft. Because the problem with the subsequent draft is he had a list of things he wanted to reference, and he didn't make it through all of them in the first drafting. So then they went back through and added all these things.
Where you do a couple more drafts, and then you get someone completely new to edit it for you, who's never even touched it.
But then he just refused. He's like, "No, I want to reference everything that's currently referenced. It all stays." And it's just,
either way, this book was just meh.
I also just felt like, yeah, he kind of just cherry picks certain things. Like, what are things nerdy? There's a big Lord of the Rings community. We're gonna definitely reference Lord of the Rings in this one. It's like, okay, dude. Cool story, bro. Yeah, it's fine. It definitely, it's a continuation. Choices were made. Number one thing these two books suffer from are just a intolerable main character.
Literally the worst.
Like, it's like, dude,
makes Ichabod Crane look like a good character.
Yeah.
It's like there was no redeeming factors to Wade. Is that his name? Wade?
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't even want to remember his name. Everyone listening to this, if you plan on having kids, if you name him Wade, I'm going to slap you. Because of these books. Yeah, it's not a good sign.
Just don't.
There's
bother.
better names anyway, but... Sorry,
Get to our next one, Seraphina, a book all about political intrigue, math dragons. There's a bit of magic and stuff like that going on. Chris, what did you think?
I'm trying to remember this book now. I want to make sure I don't get it confused for anything else. Granted, I'm not sure what else I'd confuse it for. This one, I'm going to say... I'm going to put an A. I'm guessing that's where it may end up. I don't know. Although Math Dragons, I think, is still misleading. It's one of my gripes with it. If you're going to reference math, I'm going to expect some good math. Some really fun... like incorporating math and science into a fantasy area, but it for a kind of modern fantasy piece, I enjoyed it. I think it's a world I wanted to continue on it. I considered I think I did end up. I listened to the audiobook of the second one, and so yeah, strong fantasy novel, in my opinion. Decent fantasy. Sorry, strong is fantasy's hard for me. Okay, because
You compare everything to Lord of the Rings.
yeah, exactly. But also as a result, like I don't want everything to be Lord of the Rings because Lord of the Rings is also massive.
Yeah.
And every time I want to dive into a fantasy world, I don't want to consume my brain. And Seraphina didn't do that. It was enjoyable, is decently easy to read and follow for the most part, and characters were enjoyable. So I'm gonna put it an A.
Emma, what'd you think?
This one's at a B for me. I don't remember much about it other than I enjoyed it when I read it, which typically for me, that's an indicator of like, okay, I liked it, but I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. So it's pretty neutral. So like hangs out around B for me. I enjoyed the concept of the math dragons and that like sort of shape shifty whateverness. But yeah, that's about that. I don't really have any strong opinions one way or the other with it. So
For me, I'm a little biased here because I'm the one that brought Seraphina to us. This one's an A for me. It's a strong A. In fact, if we hadn't read like probably the next book on this list, this might have been my first S tier. But yeah, so if you're playing along at home, this is the first one I've given above a B2. But yeah, I really like Seraphina. I like the analytical side of this book. I like that it's not just like knights fighting dragons and things like that. I also really like the like mental world that exists. This idea that that these certain people have this ability to kind of go in and out of this, and they're connected to each other through that.
Because they're half
And so-
breeds, dirty half breeds.
And so I like that a lot. I like the like kind of the idea too of the half dragons also have some sort of power, but none of them felt necessarily like overwhelming. And so I thought that was really cool, and I like that manifestation of the of that world. But Janine, what about you?
This one's a B for me. I agree with everything you said. It was enjoyable. It had a lot of unique elements that were really fun. It didn't make me go out and read the sequel. I think I'd still like to, but I just haven't yet, and it's not really high up on my list, so I'm not putting Seraphina higher, but I did enjoy it.
To be fair, Shane has a very big list.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Shanine's like top 10% is bigger than my book backlog.
Yeah. I'd say your top 5%.
Yeah. Well, considering my book backlog is whatever book we're reading for book club this month. So, you know.
I'd say your top 10% is about
so
the size
it's
of my
It's
backlog.
probably-
like top 0.5%.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna be like 1%. Like apparently one book. I'm assuming Shanine's book list is probably at least 100 books, at very least.
The books that I own that I haven't read yet is at least 100 books.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not counting
Yeah.
everything. Anyways.
So for our next one, we have Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. We have this kind of second world, kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say like grungy, but kind of grungy fantasy. Emma, why don't you start us off here?
solid S tier. Absolutely love this book. I mean, it's Neil Gaiman, so that doesn't come as a huge surprise to me because I love his stuff. And he's also just like, even if I didn't, he's a great writer. Like, that's just, he's definitely earned having his name be a household name, which it pretty much is at this point. this book I absolutely loved and didn't go into it really knowing what to expect, and came out the other end like feeling this is one of the few books that was the perfect length
Mhm.
on the Goldilocks sort of scale. Like it wasn't too long, it wasn't too short, at least for me. And like sure the main character was annoying at times, but he very much was intended to
At
be that way
times,
at times. And like
It's just one time
it's just
for the
one
whole book.
the
time.
entire book.
And like even then I was like, okay, like given how the rest of this is sort of going, I can put up with that. And like yeah, so S tier for me. Would highly recommend it to pretty much everyone.
Put it up there for now, since that's the only rating we have.
For me, hard agree. This is S tier for me. And so I didn't know a lot about Neil Gaiman going into this book, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the take on the world. I loved that there's enough backstory to make you understand what's going on, but it's also vague enough to where it feels like there's like interesting holes that you would want filled in. And I thought that was really cool. It really
Neil
brought,
Gaiman does that really well.
yeah. Honestly, because I'm going through Elden Ring right now, it kind of reminds me of Elden Ring in that sense, where it's like there is this story, but you're kind of supposed to like discover it as you go. And that's kind of how I feel about this. Like I just wanted to walk around that world more and find out about what's going on there. Chris, what do you think?
This is B tier for me. Maybe C. It has redeeming factors. Don't get me wrong. I love the world. I love everyone but the main character. But the main character is way too prevalent. So it gets knocked way down just because of the character. The world concept, everything else that's happening, all the other characters, absolutely lovely. But no, I'll watch anything in the Neverwhere verse. I will follow it. I'll read another story regarding it. It'll make me want to read it. But yeah, if we jumped around a little more, maybe. But yeah, the main character is just all over the place. It's all the entire, and he ruined it for me. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
All right. Easy S tier for me.
Say, Shanine, you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman can right no wrong, in my opinion. I love him. I love Neverwhere. This was book club of this one was a reread for me, and it was also great a second time through.
Look, I love Neil Gaiman. I just think this is his weakest work.
Have you read all of them?
I've read a
And
good
also-
portion now, but
No.
Shanine has strong
he
opinions.
writes better characters than this guy. And I'm just like, why?
I think I don't hate Richard as much as you do to start with, but also I just find him very relatable. He's trying, okay?
Yeah.
He's trying.
Unlike Wade from Ready Player 1 and 2, who's just a complete bonehead all the way through.
I mean, true. Very true. I'm not comparing him to Wade, though. Like, Wade is...
Where Wade is here, Richard's up here.
So in gacha games, you know, like they tier characters, you know? Wade is fodder to feed to all of your other creatures so they can become S tier.
Accurate.
That's why Wade exists.
He-
Richard is
he
just
crawled so
so
everyone
annoying,
else
and he
couldn't
takes
run.
so long to catch on. And I'm just get your together, man.
It's a completely new world that he has never known existed. You think you'd go through magical doors to the hidden other world and
It
be
wouldn't
like,
take me the whole
"Oh,
book to
yes."
figure it out. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Mhm. Depends on when the book ends.
After
When the book is.
after the first, I would stop asking questions and start just being like, okay, I obviously don't know what's going on. I'm not gonna ask these questions because they told me to shut up. I shut up.
All that to say, Neverwhere is S tier.
Do I bait out
How about-
someone's veto?
Let's put it this way. It's a D tier for Neil Gaiman, but overall,
That's-
it's an
Neil
S
Gaiman
tier.
has no D tiers.
She's like, watch your mouth.
What?
Where Neil Gaiman's D tier averages out to be an S tier for everyone else. So Neil Gaiman's entire tier list
No,
just equates to an
I'm
S.
sorry, but not everyone needs to read Neverwhere. I'm sorry. I'm half
Are
tempted to bait
entitled
out a
to your
veto.
wrong opinions.
Half
I
tempted
mean,
to bait
you
out a
can
veto.
you can use your veto. Like
I
you,
could.
if you even if you bait one out, like you're still getting rid of your own.
I know. But I don't think I have strong opinions about anything else on this list.
Okay, you gonna do it?
Yeah, I'll use my veto.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Janine, I knew
Not
you'd do
happening.
it. I was
Yeah.
just like, well, one of us is gonna do it. It's
I was gonna be
either
like, who's gonna be
Janine or
quickest on the
I.
draw?
Like,
I'll bait it out.
I'm fine with that.
Now I'm going to tear apart something else Shanine loves just for
Yeah.
the fun of it.
Well, last time you remember what happened
don't
was
think-
Shanine had used her veto earlier, and then
she regretted it.
yeah, well, but I
Did
still
I?
had mine at the end, so I was ready. So, but for our next book, we have Not All Who Wander Spiritually Are Lost, a story by Tracy Rhodes about discovering your faith, exploring other churches and faith traditions, and kind of talking through that whole experience. Shanine, what did you think?
This is an A tier for me. I absolutely adore Tracy. 10 out of 10 in S tier Twitter follow for sure.
Can confirm.
And yeah, this book was a really great read. And I think if you are on some kind of a faith journey, especially in regards to church, this is a very good one to read and get a lot of different perspectives about it.
Chris, what do you think?
This is an A tier for me as well. Thought about tearing her apart just to bug Shanine, but I couldn't do that to Tracy. And also, I really enjoyed this. I think she encapsulated. She had so many great perspectives, or brought in so many great perspectives, and yeah, almost made me go back to church. But yeah, she didn't shy away from some of the pain that people have felt, but she also painted a great picture for those who do enjoy church, and I really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed having her on.
For me, this is S tier. I really enjoyed this book. I really liked Tracy's journey and kind of how she brought us through that. I love that we also got to see conversations from other people and how those got brought in throughout the novel. I thought that was, I say novel, throughout the book. I really like that side of it. And this is something that really spoke to me as someone that used to be way more engaged in a church than I am now. And kind in the way that Tracy talks about dealing with those questions and that wandering, I thought was very, very engaging and kind of hit me in a very good spot. I love the way that I think to what Chris just said, I feel like she does a great job about not making people feel bad when she discusses of the how here's how I feel, here's all the hope, here's all the passion that I have, and that never came across as preachy. And I loved that balance of like leaving being like, oh, I want what she has there. And so this is definitely a book that I would recommend to a lot of people. Emma, what about you?
This is a solid A tier for me. I quite enjoyed it and really enjoyed the discussions that happened within it. And it felt a lot like essentially my childhood growing up. Like that was a lot of my parents tried hard to expose us to, you know, all of the different denominational faiths and you know, all of that, and how, you know, different people practice their faith while believing the same thing that someone else does. It kind of goes along with the Advent book that we read for me, in the sense of like, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I wouldn't like normally pick it up and read it, but that doesn't mean that it's like bad. I quite enjoyed it. So yeah.
So then for our next one, we have They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, a story about his time in the Japanese internment camps. Chris, what do you think?
This is a solid 8 here for me. Borderline S. I honestly think everyone, at least in the US, needs to probably read this. I like its presentation, but it's also just a very important story that provides really great insight into a very dark time, but also from, I don't know, there's a certain innocence to it too, which, as a result of that innocence of kind of writing from his childhood perspective, it presents hope despite the circumstance. And it's George Takei.
Janine, what do you think?
Yeah, very high A for me as well. Basically just all the reasons Chris said.
For me, this is S tier. The place that I struggle with this one is the people that I think need to read it the most are the ones that won't.
Those people don't read.
It does have pictures though.
That's also
This
like,
is one-
it's like this is the one they would potentially.
This one I can knock out in an hour and a half.
See, what you tell them, you don't tell them it's a true story.
Yeah.
You get them to look at the pictures and read it potentially. And you're like,
Yeah.
by the way, that all happened. Whack.
Yeah, I feel like this
Yeah.
is one that everyone needs to read and take a look at. It's such a good way of telling a historical event in a way that's approachable.
Yeah.
And yeah, to Chris, to what you just said, it's very easy to kind of do that bait and switch of like, hey, this is a really fun graphic novel. Oh, it's actually about this thing. It's about this person's experience. And I feel like it's so well done. I loved it.
Should be
10 out of
taught
10.
in schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
People should read this in school instead of Treasure Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then again, people should read just about anything in school instead of Treasure Island.
English and history teachers coordinate. Do this. No.
Yes.
English, history, and art teachers coordinate.
Yeah.
Read this.
Emma, what do you think?
I'm with you, Cameron. This is a solid S tier for
Just
me.
move it up there.
For pretty much everything everyone has said. It's very approachable both to the like history side of things and also like to the graphic novel side of things. Like I feel like I could have handed my mom or my dad this book and they first of all would have been gone, oh, it's, George Takei, who was in, like, there was a good entry point for them knowing who that was. But it was also, the subject matter was something that wasn't what you typically associate with graphic novels. But it was also, like, for me reading through it, it was a lot more impactful. The story was a lot more impactful in those visual representations, rather than just, because he also has like a full novel. Not that like the novel wouldn't be impactful, but like there's different meaning that I drew from seeing it visually represented rather than just words on paper. So it was a strong S tier for me.
Fun fact, this is our second most watched book club on YouTube. But we're going from that to something completely different as we get into this, or get more into the second half of this tier list. We have the Master of Kung Fu Epic Collection, Easy D for me. This is the introduction of Shang-Chi. We read this leading up to the movie, and the best thing that I can say about this is at least the movie wasn't about this.
Fortunately, our current book redeems it. Kind of.
Yeah, this is just so bad. This is the only one I haven't finished of the books that we read. And I was just fine with that. So I think Shanine was the only one to have finished this.
Yeah.
Of us. So yeah, easy D tier. Shanine, as the expert on Masters of Kung Fu Epic Collection, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, easy D tier. We did have an appearance from Spider-Man, which was cool.
Mm-hmm. Objectively the best part.
Oh, for sure. But in general, it was very bad. It was rough. That was a rough one. A lot of it is old, and it is old,
but not old enough to justify it.
No.
Yeah. Chris, what's your ranking?
Can I put it? I'm adding an F tier here.
F for offensive. Or
like there's nothing to be
fails
learned
to be
this.
good.
Worse than D. Like, where you thought you couldn't get any worse, guess what? You just did.
Like,
I can't give you a 0. So I guess I'm gonna have to give you
like
a 1.
Yeah, this straight up shouldn't exist. And
yep.
You know, even for its time, it was too insensitive.
Yeah.
Not well thought out. And someone would have written that a much better character later on, so it doesn't need to exist, even if we end up knowing the current new character as by a different name. But yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, this was one of the first, if not the first, that I immediately put at the bottom of the list, at the bottom of the tier. Like, it's just, this is one of 2 books I haven't finished, the other one for time reasons, but this one I was just like, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So lowest of the lows.
Like, literally, the author has never interacted with an Asian person in his life.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Character is so confused.
For our next one, I'm going to guess haven't finished for time reasons. Emma, what did you think about Dune, the space travel book all about sand?
Guess what, guys? I'm still a third of the way through.
Hey, you could watch the movie.
It.
You could watch the movie.
I mean, so take everything I say with a grain of sand, because I'm only a third of the way through and have been for several months now. It's a B tier for me because the first third of the book was a bit slow, and the foreshadowing was a bit too much in your face.
If I remember right, the slowness continues for like the second third too. No, I'm just
but like nothing. I'm fine with slow, but like it's the kind of slow where nothing really important gets built up as it goes. So like Lord of the Rings slow is fine because at least it's interesting while it's slow. This to me did not feel interesting while it was slow. So, but solid B, like I'm gonna finish it at some point when I get around to it. So my ranking may go up or down once I do finish it. So my solid B tier is just purely based on the first third of the book.
Chris, what do you think?
I'm gonna agree and put it at B. It is slow moving, but also there are some like, especially putting into context for when it was written, there's so many great sci-fi themes and great, awesome things that are happening in this. And, I think, as people like, sci-fi is your thing, this is one you should read at some point. It's definitely not higher where I'd recommend it to more people. It's definitely, it's a niche book in my mind. Like, as if you like sci-fi and you like all thing like Star Trek and you like all those things and you like sci-fi books, this is a great one, especially considering so many things have been pulled from it. So, earns a nice solid B.
Janine, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna have a hot take, but I am also putting this in B. I mean, it's a classic. It's very popular. It has a lot of great sci-fi elements. A lot of things that I really enjoyed, but I feel like it was just lacking that ineffable quality that made me love it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good. Yeah.
So for me, it had that quality. Dune is S tier.
S tier.
This is
why is that not a surprise?
And so this is a book that like I could not get out of my head. It's definitely obtuse. It's definitely slow. But I feel like and it definitely has its downs. Specifically when it comes to like the fight that goes on between like the new bad guy that gets introduced with the poison blades. Like it definitely has some parts of it that are very weird. But for what it is, like I said, I love this book. This is one of the ones that I couldn't get out of my head, especially as we read this with the movie coming out. Like there was so much here that I loved. And especially once you get into that or get out of that first third. And so I feel like the first third definitely is laying that groundwork.
A lot of groundwork.
A lot of groundwork. It's a big foundation.
But
it's a very sandy foundation, though.
Did some very interesting things, but the movie did those very interesting things well.
I mean, it's telling that the movie that is the first third of this book is like 3 hours.
Yeah,
like it's definitely telling that's the direction that they went with how much.
I will say
extremely
without
dense.
getting into the nitty gritty of things. Specifically, the editing and the editing style is very interesting. It's very unique, but it's very good. So if anyone watches it again, pay attention to when they cut and what the framing is and all of that stuff. And it's very interesting. It's not normal at all, but they do it well and they do it consistently. And it fits with the theme of the book. So, yeah. Mini lesson from the movie theater.
Yeah, we'll go to something completely different with our 14th book club book from Midnight at the Barclay Hotel. Again, a completely different take. This was a children's book about a mystery at the Barclay Hotel. It's like a little bit of a murder mystery. I really liked this. I think I have this as an A tier for me. I don't know people that I would specifically recommend this to, just because the people that I know that have kids are not at the age to read this book yet.
You said A? Sorry, what?
Yeah, A for me.
There's no
But
doubt.
yeah, I really
Okay.
enjoyed this. I think my take after we finished it was that I really wanted the author to write an adult mystery book, where they didn't have to be as heavy-handed with their foreshadowing and things like that. And so I really liked this, and again, it's one that I hope people read. Shanine, what'd you think?
Yeah, I think this being the like only middle grade novel that we've read, such a great book. Also wish that I knew more people in that age range that I could recommend it to, because it's just fun. It's fun. It's a little spoopy, but just in a fun, goofy way. And yeah, that's it. Just fun.
Emma,
Hard
what'd you think?
Yeah, hard agree. Solid A. I would have really enjoyed this kind of book in like elementary going into middle school. I was quite into that like genre. I really liked the Animorphs and the Goosebumps books. I would have really liked reading this book back then. Quite enjoyed it. Now, obviously, it was an easy read at 26, 27 years old.
I hope it's an easy read. At 26,
You know,
27
I
years
think
old.
I read it in like a day. Very delightful. Definitely would recommend it to like everyone else, kids of that age range, if I knew kids of that age range. So solid A.
Chris, I believe you were not at this book club. Oh no, this is the one that was you and Shanine. This
Yeah.
is this is the other one that the rest of us couldn't be there.
Was it just us two? Really?
Yeah,
It was.
Oh. Makes me feel
You
bad.
read this.
I did. I know I read it. Unfortunately, based on my current interaction with it, where it is in my brain, it's C tier. Because I'm trying to remember any part of this book right now. And I got nothing.
It was midnight.
At
They
the
were at a
Barclay
hotel.
Right. I remember a kid begging his mom and kind of tricking her.
With the hot tub.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's the other one. That's the girl who tricks her grandfather.
Or something. Yeah. I know there's some like tricking. All these three adults end up there with their kids that technically aren't supposed to be there. But I don't know what the climax or the conclusion was in the end now. Like, it's just escaping my brain. So it was a book. Mine goes to C for me. So I'm gonna default to your guys' ratings as a result, because
So hope you all are ready for this. This is our most viewed book club. Which kind of like surprises me. Like but yeah, so
we roped in those
that is-
middles, or the
Yeah.
not middles, middle grade, you know.
So next we have Doctor Who: The Ruby's Curse, all about River Song, Egypt, New York City, time travel, prison. Shanine, what'd you think?
I'm a little torn with this one. Like, I super enjoyed it. I think if you're a Doctor Who fan, it's an A, just because it's super fun. If you're just a general like sci-fi enthusiast, it's a B, because you're most of the point of the book.
Oh, she's back. Okay.
Yeah.
You cut out there for a second, Janine. I'm sorry.
Oh, do I need
You
to
cut
say it
out
again?
just as you're talking about if you're a general sci-fi person, it's B. That's where you cut out.
Okay.
So
Yes, because if you're not there for the Doctor Who references, then like, what's really the point?
it's true.
Yeah.
So what's your final of those? Which one are you?
I'll settle with B.
I'll go next. And I'll say for me, this is an A. Again, basically for what Shanine said. Just for me, I feel like if you're reading this, you're a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's like this is probably not a book you're randomly stumbling across and being like, oh, what is this? But again, I come at this with a little bit of bias. I've said before, and like in our Doctor Who spectacular that we just did, that River Song is like my favorite character in Doctor Who. That when she shows up is when I started like really getting into the series. So I'm a little biased there, but yeah, A for me.
Same. Cameron, you said a lot of what I was thinking. Definitely agree. It's an A for me. I definitely don't think a lot of people would like pick this up and read it without necessarily being a Doctor Who fan or someone who is at least knowledgeable of Doctor Who to some extent. Like there are certain things about it that were like disappointing or like, well, that could have been done better, but it also wasn't completely terrible. So I definitely enjoyed it and enjoyed all the good callbacks to things. And yeah, solid A for me.
And then Chris, as the non-Doctor Who fan.
It's a C for me. As the sci-fi generalist, I guess, in terms of reading a Doctor Who book, it's fine. Didn't make me want to go get into Doctor Who. It had some good sci-fi elements. I definitely remember more about it than I do right now. At the Barclay Hotel. I remember enjoying Midnight at the Barclay Hotel though, so I'm happy it ended up where it is. But yeah, it's just it was a fun read. That's all the Doctor do. Doctor Who I needed currently. Till next season, apparently.
So for our next one, we have The Last Wish, a series of semi-connected stories kicking off The Witcher. Well, not necessarily kicking off, but one of the first collections of The Witcher. Chris, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, for me, this is a solid B. Possibly a high B. Thing about books like this is it's for fans of the existing series. Granted, they came first, but like we know The Witcher from the video games for most part. I enjoyed the adaptation of the stories in the Netflix series. I do like The Witcher in general. So this is a solid B, but I just feel like the Witcher series might be niche, so I'm not necessarily going to recommend it to a lot, like necessarily everyone. But if you are a Witcher fan, definitely. I also like the short stories setup in it, I like the layout of this book, like piece by piece, instead of like kind of just a congruent standard story throughout the entire thing. I like jumping around a little bit, get a little bit of everything of the Witcherverse. But yeah, solid B for me.
Emma, what'd you think?
Pretty similar to Chris. Solid B. This is definitely one of the ones on our list for me that like did better in context. Like we were kind of saying with Sherlock Holmes, like sure you could get into it without the context of the video games or the Netflix series or whatever and like be able to follow what was happening, but it was more enjoyable for me to read it with that background information, or just like already having a sense of the world and those stories. And it was fun to see those short stories in their original format and sort of realizing that, oh, it's literally your classic fairy tale stories and characters written in a different context in a different world. Like you kind of have Beauty and the Beast, but in a different way. And a couple of others like that. And that was a lot of fun, and getting to see sort of that take on those classic fairy tales. But like Chris was saying, I definitely wouldn't immediately recommend it to anyone. Like if I knew someone was super into fantasy or a general Witcher fan, I would say go ahead and read it.
I will say it gets extra points because it's not an English native book.
Mm-hmm.
So the Witcher series always gets extra points for me because it had to be translated, and I like that. That's not just from a like English central author, which is cool.
Yeah. And it also gets along that same vein. It comes from a different cultural standpoint than a lot of our other books that are like coming from a more American or North American cultural standpoint. Obviously, Tolkien is going to be a bit different in that regard as well. But I always enjoyed books and stories like The Witcher that come from a different, like the author comes from a different sort of upbringing.
Janine, what'd you think?
This is an A tier for me. Like, I agree with a lot of what you guys have said as well. Like, I wouldn't recommend it to just anyone either, but I quite enjoyed it. Like a great introduction to the world of The Witcher and Geralt as a character. Also really enjoyed the format of it and the fairy tales, and yeah, it's good.
For me, this is S tier. It's probably the lowest S tier that I have. And so it's kind of one of those again on 6/13/2022. This is S tier. And yeah, for like a lot of what y'all have said, I really enjoyed the take on the fairy tales. I liked the scene, the twists, and these other interpretations of those characters.
It's not just the standard grim interpretation.
Exactly. And this is, y'all also all mentioned the format. I love the short stories that end up being very connected.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that format. I'll bring that idea up a little bit later on as well. But yeah, so for me, this is S tier. Barely, but this is S tier. Bringing out our final four. We had a combo of Binti and Binti Home. This is a collection of futuristic space-themed novels about Binti and her interaction with aliens. For me, this was B tier. I really enjoyed these, and I thought that they were a fun take. I really like the different cultural interpretations that we get in here versus kind of to what y'all were just saying about The Witcher. I like that we don't get the exact same twists. And so I enjoyed this a lot, and they were fun novellas. And so I still need to go back and finish the other ones. But yeah, this is B tier for me. Janine, what'd you think?
This is A tier for me. I just really enjoyed reading a sci-fi series from a different cultural perspective. Like, I feel like I've gotten so like, this is the way sci-fi is, and seeing it from just something completely different was so fun and exciting. And seeing like doing sci-fi differently, but also telling different kinds of stories and bringing different kinds of perspectives was just great. I loved it.
Chris, what about you?
I feel like during our book club, I had some gripes.
Yes, I believe you were very down on this book.
Yeah.
Like how? Like very down?
I mean, I don't remember. I mean, compared to the rest of us, you were the one that was down.
Yes.
But that's generally a common theme.
Yeah, that's just, there are things that can make it better.
If anyone's going to go against the grain, it's most likely to be you.
I was just trying to keep the conversation lively. No. in context of everything, this is an A tier book too. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be down on certain things because I feel like I think there's just some things I wanted to be better developed in it. But within the context of the length and everything of the book, I think it was very enjoyable. It is still a lot of fun. I know I had problems, but I definitely did enjoy the cultural aspect, um, and just and definitely getting a sci-fi from a different perspective. It was nice. Um, I think my biggest thing was like, why'd they have to be fish? Um,
Not just
why is
fish.
that? Why is that our space travel method?
Jellyfish.
Why do we have space fish? Why is that our way? I think that was one of my
It's just
major
turtles
gripes.
all the way down,
It's like
man.
there's so many other great sci-fi things that you can do to lean more into the science aspect of sci-fi. But I did definitely, I think, where this book shines is in its cultural perspective and themes. So
Hands down. It's definitely an A tier for me. For a lot of the same reasons that Shanine said, it was great to see and read something like a science fiction sort of book or something in that genre from a different cultural idea of what do we imagine our future to be, where we would be just based on my general perspective of the world. And with that, like, because I loved that sort of view of everything throughout the book, I wish there was more of it. Like in the sense of I wanted more out of the stories, because I enjoyed what we were given. Granted, they are novellas, so like that was kind of the intention, was to be shorter. But overall, it was definitely an A, and I love it so much that
if I remember, I definitely enjoyed Binti home more than Binti.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you saying that.
If I remember right, I don't know for sure. Run the tape. No, I'm just...
For our next one, number 18, we have Tales and Typos, a series of short stories all about Dungeons and Dragons.
Cameron, you didn't give your perspective on Binti.
Oh, I thought I went first.
I think you had Shanine go first.
Yeah.
Did I? Okay, it's a B for me.
Oh, you did.
Okay.
Because B-A... Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I was not expecting to be the lowest one on that.
You thought I was going to be.
Typos,
I gotcha.
Yeah. A collection of D&D short stories, some based on actual play at the table, some made up. The lines are kind of unclear. Emma, what do you think?
Decent collection of short stories that had a fun sort of real world connection. It's in B tier for me, just because I think this was something we talked about in that actual book club, but I didn't really enjoy how we didn't get a lot of resolve in most of the short stories. Like there just wasn't much of a resolution to most of the stories, which was a bit of a bummer because it's kind of the attraction to D&D as a game is to work through these, like play through these different conflicts and see what things come out of the choices that you make. But it was fun to, like, as someone who plays D&D, like read through these stories and be able to say, oh, they very clearly rolled terribly there, or they rolled really well there. If I were to recommend this to someone who's never played, they wouldn't get that, but I think the general population might get some amount of fun out of it. But it definitely does cater more towards people who have played.
Or at least watch Critical Role.
Yeah. Or
Or
like
Dimension
basically
20.
have some solid sense of how the game works, and the things that can happen.
Chris, what do you think?
You know what? Yeah, I'd say B. I think all the stories were fun. There's good novelty to them. Um, um, this isn't something I'd necessarily recommend just reading like a book though, um, because like nothing's really connected between the stories necessarily. Um, but it's definitely like this is something I'd recommend like bringing on a backpacking trip, like a camping trip or something. Like this is or for a flight. You could read a portion, call it good, and then you know, and then go do something, and then read another portion, or read it as a group, maybe. I don't know, but it's definitely very enjoyable. I'm pretty sure I missed that book club.
I'll go. For me, this is B tier and barely. Like even now, I'm waffling on if this should be B or C for me. I'll lock in B, but yeah, I did not like that there was no resolution to most of the stories. I didn't, unlike The Witcher, where those stories do come and tie in, at least for the most part. I did not like that we get um, introduced to interesting characters in the last short story or second to last short story, and it's just like, oh, we're never going to see this person again. Obviously,
It's just like playing D&D, Cameron.
I mean, sure, but kind of out of that, I feel like
I
this,
just got into this
to
character,
go back
and I'm never
to
gonna
what
play
I
it
said
again.
for Ready Player One. I feel like this is the book that if you would have told me this was a collection of fantasy short stories, I would put this in D tier. The fact that this is based off playing tabletop, I think does bump it up. But like again, if you would have given this to me without that context, I probably would be like more down on it. And that's kind of why I'm waffling between should it be a B or a C for me.
I feel like you're
But
pretty set on C, based on that description.
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'll change mine to C.
I'm just saying, like.
Janine, what do you think? Let's see if it matters.
All right. Well, it's an A for me. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's super fun. It's like Chris said, like just a casual read. If you like tabletop RPGs or fantasy, like why not? It's just fun.
Cameron's like, it should have been written as a blog. That's Cameron's perspective. I would read these like random stories like on like if they were released, but reading them in book form is probably what's off for him.
Yeah, I mean, I would love more of this. I think that's where I came out of that book club. Is I would love for the author to do more with these characters. I just don't think that this format was great for me.
Janine especially likes it because she's like writing prompts.
Yeah.
Right. I was gonna say like so many good like campaign hooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like my perspective too, is like it's very niche. But I really enjoyed the stories, but they there's good ways to use them and take away from them. Like if you are a DM, I'd recommend definitely reading this. There's some good things that happen, and you can.
I don't know. Look at the chapter summaries.
I mean, every chapter is just a chapter, so like that's they're
much.
short enough that it's like okay, every story in it's kind of its own little summary.
And so, yeah, I updated my personal tier list to bump it down to C. Let the record show. And so, but speaking of not a quick read, we got The Robe as our 19th book club. All about the rise of Christianity, told from the eyes of a centurion and his slave as they get into trouble. And so, Chris, what'd you think of The Robe?
It's a book. It's definitely a C tier for me. Maybe it got a little overhyped because it had so many great reviews, but or maybe within a certain era of the American Christian Church it had a place. But that's fine. It's not something I'd necessarily recommend. And and someone asked me to do this like as part of like a study or anything. I think it had good historical elements for the kind of it had some very bad historical elements too, though. So yeah, we'll leave it at see. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't exist. It should so belongs in C for me.
For me, this is also C. Kind of offsetting. I really enjoyed the read of this. But I did not. It's one of those that like once you stopped to think about it, that was when it was like that's when it started to fall apart for me.
Like, you could tell it's written by a Christian like person.
Right. It's like, I think it's a fun read. But I don't. So what you just said, Chris, I don't know if I would recommend it to people in the modern church setting, nor do I told this to my boss actually as I was reading it, of like, I don't know if I would have found this interesting if I wasn't already a Christian. Like, I just don't know where this belongs. And yeah, there's a lot of also, bad takes based on when this was written.
Yeah.
And so not nearly as bad as Masters of Kung Fu, but some pretty bad takes. So
yeah. Like, reading this book, you could kind of pick out like general decade, obviously written by a Christian, and what decade that Christian belonged to, like participated in church based on reading the book. And that's weird when you're talking about a historical fiction.
Yep. Janine, what'd you think?
This is a C for me as well. I think this was probably the most down on a book I have been yet in book club. I don't really want to put it in D because there were like some good elements that I appreciated, but
I mean, it did seem like an editor was there versus Ready Player 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like,
yes, it was coherent. I don't know. I had so many gripes. So many gripes. But yeah, like it was what it was, I guess.
Emma?
It's a book. We're all in agreement. It's a C for me as well.
It's our first C, guys.
Yay!
We did it. I was like, what's the C tier doing? Like, nothing's ending up there.
It's my only C.
It's definitely one of those books for me that was at least 30% too long. And the spots where it was good, like quite interesting. But then the rest of the time, if it wasn't good, it was like questionable discussion here. Pretty much like everyone else has said, like
introduce awesome female character. Forget about them.
Yeah, they literally do nothing.
Exactly. And you spend a good paragraph or two giving them this whole in-depth background.
We open up with an awesome female character, and then
like they don't actually do anything for the entire book. What's the point of spending all that time doing that if they're not going to do anything?
It's the bait and switch. I know you like this female, but here's her brother.
Let's go figure out his life story for the rest of the book.
So our final book club so far is Piranesi. And so a story all about Piranesi as they are trapped in this labyrinthian place called the House. And it's about the mystery that's going on and what this place is. And so, Shanine, what did you think of our final book club?
S tier for me. I loved it. It was great. I love that kind of book where I'm trying to figure out what is going on. It's great.
Emma, what'd you think?
Also S tier for me. It's definitely like, I mean, we've talked about it both in Discord and in the book club. Like the first third is definitely confusing. You don't really know what's happening, but the author does really well in like tying up all the loose ends. So it's very good at like making you confused, but then like answering all of your questions by the end. I think, Cameron, you said in book club, it's worth reading through a second time now, knowing like all of the information. And I definitely agree. Like, I would definitely recommend this book to a lot of people, as well as reading it again myself, just because it's that like sort of unreliable narrator type story that's done really well.
Chris, you were not in this book club.
And I actually didn't read it
Bum, bum, bum.
because I knew I wasn't going to be there.
Okay.
Kind of.
Then
Also, like, yeah, I was just, maybe it was crazy.
So then I'll
So
finish
crazy.
this out. This is the last one I was waffling on. And I'm going to bump it up to S tier for me as well. And so this was one that was riding that line. And you know, if we're going to be down on Tales and Typos, we're going to be up on Piranesi.
There you go.
And so I really enjoyed this book. The moment when it all clicks, I think, is extremely well done. It's like the mystery side of it. Again, like going into this book, I felt like I was going to need Shanine and Emma to explain it to me, just because I had no clue what was going on. And then by the time you actually get to the twist and you actually start to find out, everything clicks into place, both for Piranesi and for you as the reader. I think that it is amazingly well done.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so happily bumping it up to S tier for me.
It's definitely that, like, that format of storytelling done well.
Now I'm sad I missed out.
It's definitely a format that's like, it's hard to do, and you can really tell when that kind of format, like when the creators flop with it. But when it's done well, it's done really well, and it really enhances the storyline. And this was one of those examples.
So that concludes our book club top 20 tier list. Listeners, you can find a link to the tier maker for this in the description if you would like to make your own. Hopefully we'll all be able to also post our own, so that way we can share our thoughts more in that sense as well. And so as we get to the end, announcements for going on. Who is planning on streaming this week?
Probably not this week again for me.
I should be streaming. I should be.
I will not be.
Last week, I completely forgot that we were going to go see Jurassic World. And so when I was discussing when I would stream, I'm going to try to do some streaming this week, hopefully on Wednesday. And so we'll see what goes on with that. And then next book club, We Were Dreamers by Simu Liu. End of the month for book club number 21. Hope everyone can come and join us for that. I'm really enjoying it so far. Yeah. With that, we are First Geek 411. You can find us all over social media. You can join our Discord server and shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out that Redbubble store for the First Geek merch. And you can watch live on Twitch, 6:45 Mountain Time, Monday nights, and find the videos over on our YouTube. And then you can check us out at our personal social media. Mine is Humar Whittill.
Mine is I am not prepared with an I.
I'm the Hoot and Howl on Twitter and Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES on Instagram.
No, I'm not so foreign.
And it's been a great week.
Go jump in a pool.
Read a book.
Wash them hands and eat some fish.
I love you.